Hello, this is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana. Today I'm going to do a 3x3x3 review for The Adventures of Robin Hood by Michael Menzel and published by KOSMOS Games. I'm going to talk to you about three things I really like about this game, three things that either I didn't care for, or I could see other players not enjoying, and then give you three recommendations of other games that are in some way similar to The Adventures of Robin Hood. First, let me start with the things that I really love about The Adventures of Robin Hood. First up, it is very easy to play, and you can get into the game with basically reading a small pamphlet of general rules or guidelines because the game plays out through a series of stories in this just beautiful hardbound book. And the first story, the first chapter in the book, basically walks you through the rules and teaches you every mechanism, every step of the game through the story. So you're not just reading rules, you're actually learning to play by playing the game. This came up a little bit in Legends of Andor, but I think it's done even better in this one. So Michael Menzel is the creator of both games. I think this one just, you can jump in and literally in a few minutes be playing this game without having to had to read a whole bunch of rules and or watching videos to understand it. And it's also quite easy to play. So you could play it with a wide variety of people in terms of age groups and gaming experiences. Very easy to learn. Love the tutorial onboarding process they've used here, and love the book too. That's a little bit of a side note, but yeah, I'll mention that again here in a minute. The second thing is that this particular theme really appeals to me. I love just not historical, but fictional heroes, and Robin Hood is one of my favorites. I love the old cartoon from when I was a kid. I've watched all kinds of both comedic and serious versions of Robin Hood movies, and just it's one of my favorite themes, just generally speaking. And I think the theme really comes through greatly in the art of the game. The game board is beautiful. It also comes through in the narrative, which is in this book, and I really like how they've used this book to not only give the narrative, but just the way they've designed it. Very clever design there as well. And so, and then even the gameplay, you're running your characters all over the board and you're trying to accomplish tasks that either you know was actually part of the Robin Hood legend if you've read some of the stories or seen some of the movies, or it seems at least believable enough that it could be part of a movie or a story you've read or seen before. And so the theme just really comes through, and that's always a big selling point for me in games. So that is the second thing I really love about The Adventures of Robin Hood. The third thing is there's some really clever things that they've done in this game that are different than most games. One is that they've, on the game board itself, they've put these little pieces, and I don't want to show too much here, but this is one that'll come off the board right away. They're like an advent calendar where a piece comes out, there's going to be something underneath, and there's going to be something that you flip over, and you'll be flipping these tiles back and forth. Now, this is a nobleman. That's why I'm showing it to you, because there's not really much risk of spoiling anything here. You're going to see these noblemen and these soldiers popping up right from the beginning, even in the tutorial. But there's all kinds of pieces all over the board that you're going to be taking out, flipping. They show up in some stories, they don't in other stories. And so that's very unique. This is one piece of an 8-piece board. If you want to see more details about the components and clearer pictures of them, you can check out my unboxing that I did for this when I first received it. But there's 8 of these, yeah, 8 of these boards that fit. I was trying to remember, it's 2x4, so 2 tall and 4 wide. And then all of them have these little advent calendar pieces. So that's something unique to me. Both the puzzle piece board is unique, at least for me, and then the advent style of flipping different tiles for different stories and flipping them back over when it's resolved, and just all kinds of unique mechanisms that come out of that unique advent style board design. Another thing that's unique is the player movement. Instead of rolling dice or something like that, each player has a couple of different components, and these are actually from a few different players. This is one of the components for Robin, and this is one of the components for Will. And but there's long ones and then there's also short ones. All right. And so you can decide, each character has 2 short ones and 1 long one, and you can decide, you put them end to end and you line them up to have your character move across the board. And so if you want to go really far, you use both long ones and, or sorry, both short ones and the long one. But every time you don't use the long one, you actually gain a white cube into the bag, and I'll talk about the bag building in a minute, but that's actually a favorable thing for your crew. So you're always trying to decide, how far do I need to go? Do I need to use my short ones, my long ones, all 3? And then as you develop and learn more about the game, advantages and disadvantages and opportunities for changing that movement show up. But it's all based around using these components, which I think is really cool. And the wooden components just Here are a couple other wooden components. As you unbox it, you're going to see them, and I won't tell exactly what these are, who these represent, but these show up as well. And you can just see it's really beautiful wooden carved chunky pieces. And so the theme comes through in the art, the themes comes through in these pieces, and just these mechanisms of movement and of the advent board, and also the way the bag, I mentioned the bag building, bag drawing. You're going to have all kinds of components in this bag. You're going to have always you're going to have a bunch of these little cubes that represent the characters and represent good and bad events, basically. You're also going to have these little wooden discs, and they represent the different characters in the game. You're going to have them there. You're going to have these little cardboard circles, and they represent different seals. I won't spoil exactly what they represent because that doesn't come up till the second chapter of what they represent, but you can see them in the board right away. They're going to be in the bag. And so you're going to be drawing those things out of the bag, and everything goes into the same bag, but it's a nice big bag. You can easily reach your hand in, and you can move things around in there and try to figure out, am I pulling out a cube? Am I pulling out a disc? Am I pulling out a seal? And that is a really clever way of managing the system. Instead of having a bunch of different bags for all the different components that you're drawing randomly, it all just goes into one bag, and they're designed differently enough that you can tell them apart. So several clever mechanisms that are used in this game that I really like. That's the third thing I love about the Adventures of Robin Hood. However, there are some things that I think are downsides to the game, negatives from our experience, that I think we've been disappointed by ever so slightly for most of them, but I could also see other people maybe being more or less bothered by them. So I'll mention them. The first one is that in this book, and the narrative is driven by this, we have found a few translation errors or typos. Nothing major, nothing that really throws you off the story, but there's been a few times where we've been reading and had to kind of read it a couple times to make sure we understood what was going on. Not frequent, but enough that it bears mentioning. And so that's something. And then there's a few rules as you start getting into different scenarios. You're like, well, would this count or would this not count? And so far, we haven't found an explanation of it in this storyline book, which actually explains a lot of the rules, or the rules manual. So there's just a couple things that seem a little unclear. One specifically is that certain parts of the board, and you learn this again right at the beginning, certain parts of the board are in the shadows and certain parts are lit up. And there's one part that if the building doesn't separate it into two areas, then it's an enormous light area. And so we started playing where it was not, where the building separated it. But then when we noticed that there actually wasn't a break in the shadow, now we've been playing it that it's all one area, and it's never really clarified. All the other areas seem pretty clear and they're pretty small, but this is a really large one. So not sure if the building's supposed to cut it off or not. Mostly doesn't really significantly impact gameplay. It's just a little lacking of clarity that I wish could have been improved. And so, maybe in a second printing, some of those little details will be addressed a little bit more clearly in the manual. The second thing is that the Advent style, while it's really clever and we love flipping the pieces over and seeing what's behind the ones that we haven't seen before, and even the ones we've seen before, they show up and they do different things and different elements of the story for some of them. But in this part of the board, we haven't explored nearly as much, but there's a lot of these pieces where they're starting to break down because of the constant putting them into the board, taking them out of the board, flipping them over. And we've played 7 times, so an hour to an hour and a half each time, and a lot of the pieces are starting to look pretty rough, and the board itself, where they fit in and out of and pull out of, is starting to look a little rough. Not terrible, but I can see that, like, if we finish this and wanted to pass it on, or if they have expansions in the future and want to keep playing it, that's just going to continue to break down more and more than a typical board game would. So it's not terrible, but it is something to understand. And along with that component design, these seals and these wooden discs, you're going to be pulling them out of the bag, and you have to pull one or the other. You're choosing a disc or a seal, and they are different in size. You can see here, hopefully, that the seal is slightly bigger, but just slightly. And when you get a few of these seals stuck together, they're almost as thick as the wooden board, and so sometimes you're trying to fiddle around. I think just a very slight change that might have been better is if these seals were square or these tokens were square, so they would just feel a little bit more different. It's a minor nitpick, but that's something about the components. Those two elements of the design of the board in terms of its physicality, I think could be slightly improved. And then the last one, and this one doesn't really bother us because I think it's pretty thematic, but there's a lot of luck, and there is some strategy. You have to time things out and decide when you're going to use different advantages that you gain as your characters learn new things, but there is a lot of luck of what comes out of the bag. And, if you think about the Robin Hood movies, it's like, oh, they made it in just the nick of time, or, oh man, they should have known not to do that. Now they're arrested, or, all these different things. It kind of feels thematic, and so it doesn't bother us. And luck in games just generally doesn't bother my wife and I as much as it does some game players. So it's just something to be aware of. We haven't been bothered by it very much at all, but I could see some feeling like, oh, there's just not enough deep strategy here, and it bears a lot on luck. Um, so just take that as you will. We've enjoyed it and feel like that element feels thematic to us, and it hasn't bothered us in the least. We've really loved this game. So those are three things that we really like about Adventures of Robin Hood, and three things that we could see could use some improvement or that might bother some other players. And now the three recommendations. Well, the reason I was most excited about this initially, and as soon as I heard Michael Menzel was coming out with it, the theme of Robin Hood immediately just sucked me in. But when I heard it was Michael Menzel, I also thought, Legends of Andor is one of our family's favorite games of all time. I would say it's for sure still in our top three. We love this. I always felt like it was just an adventure in a box. And there are certain kinds of carryovers that you feel. The art of Michael Menzel, you can definitely tell his familiar art, beautiful in both cases. We just love the way this game, Legends of Andor, plays. Now, Legends of Andor, it also has that onboarding tutorial, but it's not quite as smooth as the one in this book, mainly because there's a lot more going on in Legends of Andor. And it's not driven by a book, and everybody's read a book before. And so this is driven by a sequence of cards, and the story's not as narratively fleshed out. It leaves a little bit more to the imagination, and there's a little bit more going on the board. So while there's some similarities, there's some differences. This would be not as easy to play with really younger kids or people who haven't played many modern board games. This would be more of a next level game. It's not incredibly difficult. It's not like a Vital Lacerda type difficulty, but it is more than Robin Hood. Robin Hood's much more of a beginner game. You could really work it through with anybody. But we love Legends of Andor, and as soon as I heard Michael Menzel was making this one in the theme of Robin Hood, I knew it was going to be in. So there's definitely some similarities in art and adventure. This is just a little bit deeper version, and there's a lot of expansions for this, both by Michael Menzel and also fan-made expansions you can find online. So lots of expandability and opportunity. If you like Adventures of Robin Hood, you probably would enjoy Legends of Andor if you want a little step up in complexity. Another one that we've really loved this year is Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods is by Ryan Lockett and Red Raven Games. And this one also, you have a map, and the map is in a book for Sleeping Gods, and you're flipping the pages and going to different areas, and you're exploring. This is more exploration, whereas Robin Hood, you see the whole map from the beginning, and that's pretty true of Legends of Andor as well. This one, you're exploring different maps and going to different places, but the narrative and the travel really comes through in similarity to Robin Hood and Sleeping Gods. You go to these different places, you read the books, you make decisions, and the storyline evolves as you're going through and making the decisions. And the decisions you make matter. The things that you do will take you off on a certain branch of the story that you may or may not see otherwise. And the same thing happens in Adventures of Robin Hood. So that narrative, story-driven, and the beautiful art. This is not by Michael Menzel, obviously, but Ryan Lockett's art is just as beautiful, just his own style. So Sleeping Gods is another one. This one, like Legends of Andor, though, does have many more components. It's quite a bit more complicated. It's definitely not a beginner's game. It's also, again, not the most complicated game I've ever played, but there's a lot going on in Sleeping Gods. I would say it's pretty comparable in that way to Legends of Andor, but very different storylines, and yeah, just a different writer's approach to it, being Ryan Lockett versus Michael Menzel, but both tremendous games. So Sleeping Gods is my second recommendation. And then the last one is one we've really been loving here recently, and that is Role Player Adventures by Thunderworks Games. This one, the map is smaller, and you have multiple different maps, and the narrative is not in one book, but many books. Every single book has its own narrative story, but it does have a lot of narrative. There is a little bit of moving around the map, and you can see the whole map from the beginning for each of the separate narratives. This one is much more about rolling dice and then manipulating the dice and trying to tell this, not tell the story, but live out the story and see whether you succeed or fail by using dice. Whereas in Legends of Andor, it's that bag drawing, pulling pieces out. So some similarities in terms of just incredible narrative, incredible sense of adventure. I do think Role Player, while it has far more pieces and it looks way more complex than the Robin Hood Adventures of Robin Hood, I would say once you get into this game, it's every bit as simple to play. And it didn't really take nearly as long. We thought it was going to be far more complex. So I think in terms of complexity, this one's much more similar to Adventures of Robin Hood. I'd still say Adventures of Robin Hood is a bit more simple, but this one is not much more complicated in terms of once you understand it, the gameplay is really nice and smooth, and it's pretty easy to understand. So those are my 3 recommendations for games that if you think you would like Adventures of Robin Hood, or if you've played Adventures of Robin Hood and you know you like it, try some of these other games. Or if you've played these other games and you really like those are the elements that are similar that might mean you'll also like the Adventures of Robin Hood. So what are my final thoughts for the Adventures of Robin Hood? We love this game. Every time we can. We've only had it for a couple of weeks and we've already played 7 chapters. We're going back to it. We're trying to go back and do the other branch now from the different storylines. We are loving the story. We're loving the ease of play. Yeah, it just really fits us nicely. I would say, but I mentioned before, it's an easier game. Some people say maybe it's a little too light, but for us, it's just right. It's a nice, easy, hey, we've got an hour and a half to kill tonight, and we're not, not really energetic enough to dig into a really deep or a longer game. Let's just jump right into this and enjoy the adventure. And so for me, it's about an 8.5 out of 10. It ranks really highly. Not quite as high as Legends of Andor for me. Not quite as high as Role Player Adventures for me. About on the same level as Sleeping Gods for me in terms of my enjoyment and my desire to get back to it. But this one's just so much easier to get back to quickly. And it's so easy to jump into. We could get anybody playing this really easily. So really loving this one. Hopefully this video is helpful for you to decide if it might be a game that you want to try out. If you did enjoy the video and it was helpful in any way, I would really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up down below to show me that. And it would be terrific if you would also choose to subscribe to the channel. If you have played it, let me know what you like or dislike about the game. And if you haven't and you have questions, let me know those as well. And I'll be glad to answer those in the comments down below. If you play Legends of Andor, Sleeping Gods, Role Player Adventures, and you want to comment on that as well, or if you have other games that you think would be similar in some way to Legends or the Adventures of Robin Hood, let me know that as well. As always, thanks for watching. This is Billy Indiana, signing off.